peace, justice, and liberty. He's an educator, and he have worked tirelessly to provide safe spaces and better education in Africa for the young generation. The process of enhancing a libertarian society in Africa have also been one of his higher desires. So tonight, Mr. Bayo will be taking us through the topic individual liberty or individualism. So trust me, he have hard knowledge when it comes to the issue of liberty. He has been trained by a student for liberty and he understands the issue of liberty well. He and I met as student for liberty in 2019, and he served as one of the bosses there. He's one of those bosses that I have learned from a lot. He have guided me in the process of my leadership at Student for Liberty. So tonight you are going to hear from him because he knows about the topic that I'm talking about. So Mr. Bayo, welcome for the student of Global Institute of Peace and Liberty to this specific class. We are highly delighted and joyful to have you here tonight as one of our liberty also a trainer of our last session for class 5. You are highly welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for that wonderful introduction. I feel very humbled to be introduced to this class. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Like you mentioned, my name is Bayo Lifesobi, and this evening we are going to be looking at the topic individualism. And I hope at the end of this session, we all have enough to gather. I would like to still encourage us to please rally around our classmates to join up this session so we can have a fuller class as much as possible, as it's important that we all are on the same page to ensure that we have a very good learning process this evening. Okay, so I'll be sharing my screen, and kindly let me know when you can see my screen from your end. Please type yes in the chat box if you can see my screen from your end. It's important that I am aware that you can see my screen. Okay, great. I see just one yes. Okay, great. I have a few more comments now, and I think we can continue. All right, good evening again. My name is Byron Lifesobia, and again, the topic, thank you very much for your feedback. We're going to be looking at individualism together. And it's important that we understand that as much as possible, individualism covers a wide area of, knowledge. And it's important to quickly identify that the basic parts which applies to us, or, in attempt to split individualism into parts, is to see them in terms of our individual principles and how these interact with the society, and also how individualism exists within the political sphere, how the philosophical and the economic aspects of it plays out. It's also important that we talk about the forms of political individualism as parts of what informs free thoughts, objectivism, existentialism, and some of its philosophical phases, and then look at the classical liberalism and as well conservative liberalism as in terms of its economic phases. Of course, again, individualism could boil down to affect religion, cultures, and other forms of human life. And I want to welcome you again for joining. My name is Bayon Lifesobi. I'm a regional coordinator for Students for Liberty Africa, and it's my pleasure joining you today. Today's session would cover the following aspects. I'm trying to introduce you to what individualism is all about. The next, we'll try to understand what individualism itself means. We check out what principle of self-ownership means. We look at property rights, political individualism, we conclude and then we check some of our references. Of course, we give credit to the sources of the knowledge we are sharing. Okay, so let's get started. While it is comfortable for us to see individualism as a habit or principle of being independent, free, or self-reliant, it remains much as more a social theory that favors freedoms of actions for every individual or collective, central or state control. You know, recall from the fact that we see ourselves as a political being. And talking about individualism, we are saying that this concept favors more of actions that comes from individuals against collective or central or state control. All right. So here we recall the fact that the freedom we are talking about is from the position of control, which is relative to the control that is external. What you cannot control is not within your purview. Therefore, we say you are not free, but you are free when you have the larger degree of control at your own end. So we tend to see individualism within a stream of thought that encourages free enterprise in relation to pursuit of profit. So if you are free to engage in business, are you also free to make profit? Are the prices not determined by other factors? If this is true, then we say, good, you are free, and then you are economically free. Within this context, gains and rewards should not be determined by a central or general planning scheme, but as a function of what each man can accrue to himself. What becomes your profit should not be determined by the government. What becomes your profit should not be determined by the state, should not be determined by any other person. It should be determined by how much of work you can invest into your own business. And that's what makes individualism very, very unique. All right, so we move on to understand that sometimes people misconstrue individualism to mean that, oh, it is a me versus we issue. But that's not true. It's not a case of me versus we. It's a case of me first. We are not competing against others. We are saying every individual is important. So we agree that, you know, every individual is born with their right, life, with their right to life, liberty, and property. Those three things cannot be disassociated from every individual. And of course, it is to allow room for the protection of these basic rights that we create government. Therefore, we are free to do as we please, as long as we do not infringe on the rights of another person. And that's what individualism is all about. You are free to act and do as you please, as long as you do not infringe on the rights of another person. Therefore, individualism is also what we sometimes refer to as responsible freedom. So it's through the exercise of these rights that we explore the world, we discover our passions, and then we make a living. And of course, sometimes we serve our communities. Our rights include freedoms of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of movement and protection from unreasonable searches and seizures. But they are not limited to this, because the scope of human freedom in action and thought is limitless. You cannot say, oh, this is the level of freedom you are able to gain at a particular time. So this right comes with responsibilities. And what are these responsibilities? Is that we own to ourselves the right to life, right to liberty, and the right to property, and pursuit of happiness. Now, we do this within the confines that we are not infringing on the rights of others. All right. So you respect the other person. You treat them as the bearer of rights rather than objects to be used for the ends of others. It's important that as individuals, we realize that our right to life and property can only be protected and should not be taken away by any form of association, either government, either the state, either an organization or group of people. Right? It's also important to understand that we need to be self-reliant. You need to be able to stand for yourself, complete human being. While we preach cooperativeness, we preach interconnectedness, it's also important to identify the fact that an individual is a sufficient member of a group if he is self-reliant. Of course, it's also instructive to identify that an individual is not fit for a community or for a group if he is not self-reliant. It is from what you bring that the group lives on. So we should be able to provide for ourselves, we should be able to provide for our families, and we should refrain from coercing others to provide for us. It is not compulsory that people fend for us. It is not compulsory. We should not, depend on people to feed us, to clothe us, or to provide shelter for us. As individuals, we should take up that responsibilities since you have life within you to provide for yourself. Therefore, it is in the process of providing for yourself that you become contributors to the well-being of others rather than being a burden to them. Honestly, this is the basis, this is the genesis of poverty in Africa, not being self-reliant, depending on families, depending on other people to survive. And that is why individual freedom is far from us. The principle of self-ownership teaches us to own ourselves. And it simply states that you own your life. And to deny this is to imply that another person has a right over your life. All right, please let's confirm that you can hear me. It's important that we are all following. I hope you all can hear me. Feel free to type in your questions. Feel free to interject through the chat box. Without wasting time, let's continue. And like I was trying to explain to us the principle of self-ownership. And I mentioned that it states that you own your life. And to deny this, you are implying that another person has a higher claim on your life than you do. In fact, in its real sense, no other person or groups of people own your life, nor do you own the life of others. It's important to understand that we exist in phases. We exist within the confines of time. We exist in terms of what the time says, in the past, in the present, and in the future. And this manifests in how our past is the product of your life and liberty. So therefore, to lose your life, is to lose your future, because your present is what the liberty is offering, and why your future is your life. No other person or group of persons own your life, nor do you own the lives or futures of others. It's important as libertarians or as students of liberty to understand that you own yourself and you should take responsibilities for yourself. Please use the chat box if you have any contributions to make. And to lose your liberty is to lose your present and the product of your life, which is your liberty, and then to lose that portion of the past which has produced it. All right? This is very, very important. If we do not own up to the responsibility that we own ourselves, if we do not own up to the responsibility that we belong to ourselves, and we have every right to cater for ourselves, we become burden on other people. And doing this will not in any way help the society. So you see how individualism is a very, very strong libertarian principle that hinges on the development of society as much as it helps every individual to be self-reliant. So don't lose your liberty. Don't lose yourself. It's important that you own yourself and that you are in charge of yourself. This is very, very important. Now let's quickly look at what property right is. Property right is the product of your life and liberty, because property is the first of your labor, is first the labor which is the product of your time and energy, and as well as your talent. If you invest your time, your energy, your talent in an activity, it should yield for you some form of profit, and that profit is what you use in acquiring properties. So property is that part of nature which you can turn into a valuable use. You see how that works? Property is that profit. Profit is the property of others that is given to you by voluntary exchange and mutual consent. As classical liberals, it's important that we understand that profit is not a form of surplus disadvantage of the other person. Profit is not what I get by cheating somebody to a product. No, we both agree to make a transaction, to make an exchange. If you do not agree, I cannot sell. But once there's an agreement, yes, there's a transaction taking place. And once that transaction takes place, the profit that comes to me becomes my property. The product becomes your property, and the profit becomes my property. If I gather this profit together, I can buy another property for valuable use. So two people exchange property voluntarily. You exchange your money, I give you my product in agreement. No one of both parties can force each other to agree either to the price or to the quality of the product. All right. So voluntarily, you go to the market, you bring your money from your pocket, and then you buy a product. The other person willingly sells to you. You have exchanged that money, which is your property before, for another property. He, in return, gains that money and then gets profit from it and then uses it to acquire another property. You see how property rights and individualism are intertwined. So people see fraud as a form of taking things from others without their voluntary consent. And the initiation of force or fraud is tantamount to murder, because you are taking their core life from them. To take liberty from them, to take the possibility of being free from people, is to put them under slavery. And then you are restricting them from making profits. If they are unable to make profits, of course they will steal, because whatever you use comes to you either by profit, either by legitimate means or illegitimate means. So if they cannot acquire it legally, they will acquire it illegally. So it's the same thing if you ask others to do the same for you. It's the same thing if you ask officials to do it the same for you. So if you have rights to protect your own life and your property and justly acquired property from forceful aggressions of others, you also cannot ask others to defend you. You can only ask them, in mutual agreement. You have no right to designate others to initiate force against another person on your behalf. Asking the police to arrest someone and inflict injury on them. No, you can only report a case in the police station. You cannot determine how much of influence the police would invest into their investigation. Right? So, while you understand that property right is a core central focus of individualism, we also need to understand that this right is exclusive to every individual. You cannot use the right of another person, and you cannot ask someone else to take the right of another person. All right? Great. So you see that property right is when you agree within yourself to make a transaction. You stand out, you get what is called profit. And from your profit, you're able to acquire what? Property. So there are three important parts of property rights that you should never forget. One, I call them the three irrefutable truths. Okay, I get your question. I'll take them after the presentation. Thank you. Please keep them coming. So first truth is that property right is a product of your life and liberty, which is your property. Two, property is that part of nature which you can turn into valuable use. Three, profit is the property of others given to you by voluntary exchange and mutual consent. It's very important that you understand these three basic truths as foundations of property rights. If you understand this, then you understand how individualism works. We move on to say that you cannot give anybody rights that you do not have yourself. So since you own your life, you are only responsible for your life. You cannot live your life and live another person's life. You can only live one life, and which is enough for you. So trying to impose decisions, trying to impose opinions, trying to shut down the opinions of others shows that you are not giving them their duly individual rights, their individual liberty. Now, let's talk about political individualism. Of course, you cannot give any right that you do not have. And since you own your life, you are only responsible for it. You only have the right to seek leaders for yourself, but you have no right to impose leaders on others. No matter how elected officials no matter how officials are selected, they are only human beings and they have no right or claims. They have no right or claims that they are higher than any other forms of human beings, regardless of the labels for their behaviors or the number of people encouraging them. Officials have no right to murder, to enslave, or to steal. So you cannot rent your life from others who demand your obedience. You are not a slave to others who demand your sacrifice. And that's the core root of political individualism. It boils down to good governance, good leadership, and individualism in its core. So you choose your own goals based on your values. You choose your own goals based on your values, because success and failure are both necessary incentives to learn and to grow. Your actions on behalf of others or their actions on your behalf is only virtuous when it is derived from voluntary mutual consent. For virtue to exist, we need to establish what we mean by our free choice. And by free choice, we mean that there is existence of alternatives for people to choose from. People have, various options to select a choice from. They are not being imposed with probably no choice or few choices. There are thousands of alternatives to choose from, and then they choose from that. Okay, and this is the basis of a truly free society. It's not only most important and practical, but it is also ethical, that you allow people to have opportunity to choose, not just few options, numerous alternatives, so that they can weigh what is best for them and make a decision. The world is in problem today because government is trying to initiate force, and as a form of solution for the people, and while this goes on, evil arises because people, good people who tolerate the initiation of force as a means of their own ends. They do not see the initiation of force as a wrongful action. So they have empowered evil people throughout history. They allow people to arise as a result of involuntary means. And it is what has caused problem all over the world. Now, take a look at this picture. What comes to your mind when we say individualism? When we say individualism, people think that we say, oh, you must be selfish, you must be alone, you must be self-centered, you have to, I don't know what else you might want to think individualism can mean. But of course, it does not call for a life of, quietness or selfishness or self-centeredness. It calls for a life of responsibility. It calls for a life of responsibility. If you understand that, yes, I need to take responsibility for my life. Yes, my life belongs to me, and I make decisions that make my life profitable as much as possible without infringing on the right of others. Then you can take the best decision for yourself. That's how individualism works. So while you see the picture, of a man sitting alone, it is not only interpreting that he's taking responsibility for himself, it also means that he singles himself out of the crowd and takes a decision that is best for him at a particular time. It's also important that we check that every individual is more important than the collective. I know this is a very controversial issue to agree with. The group exists because there are individuals. Therefore, the individuals are much more important than the group, even when it is finally formed. The individual is much more important, is the most important factor in a collective group. So we should not sacrifice the interest of any individual because of what some group of people think. No, every individual matters. Every individual matters. Every individual is worth the effort spent. The interest, the opinion, the perspective of one person matters a lot in decision making. So even as leaders of liberty, people who understand what liberty means, you need to understand that as an individual, you also need to embrace what every individual means. You need to celebrate, you need to acknowledge that every individual is very, very important. You need to treat them as such because that's the same way they treat you. All right. And with that, I wrap up this conversation. And I want to thank you very much for listening. Excerpts from this conversation has been taken from some of the books we read. And some of them you can see on the screen. We give credit to Professor Ken Schooland for making available some of the books that form my basis of conversation with you today. Largely is a book on Adventures of Free Market by, Jonathan Gullible, Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, which is a free market adventure written and produced by Lux Luckery. You can access the book on that website. And of course, some of my teachings while I was growing the Student for Liberty movement in Nigeria around 2018, where I taught about the philosophy of liberty. And of course, some of the definitions of individualism was picked from Wikipedia. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions at this time, yes, we will take questions. So I have a question already. I would pick that, and from there we'll move to answering other questions on the chat box. Please, if you have questions at this time, please let me hear them. Yes, we have contributions from Vasco. Vasco Gawo says that individualism is truly the moral right of an individual. Yes, every individual has the right to own himself. Every individual has that right to own themselves. Yes, that's very correct. So he asks that, can individualism really be applied in a poverty-stricken society where there are economic instabilities and no freedom? Okay, so I start from the beginning. Why is there no freedom? Why is there no freedom? Why are people restricted? Why are people not free? So the reason why people are not free, the reason why most people are under restrictions and constraints is because they have sold out their freedom. That's the basic truth. Some persons have enforced some opinions on them, and they have traded their interest for something else. So the reason why there is no freedom is because some people knew that there was enough freedom on ground, and they took it all and they hijacked it. And then we do not have access to them again. That's why there is no freedom anywhere. That's why you need to take permission from them. Oh, sir, I want to travel. Can I get an approval? They give you something, it's called visa. If you don't have that visa, you cannot travel, because they are aware that if you are allowed to move, you would cause exploits. You would be productive. You would be more efficient. So they will restrict you. They know if you get there, there is enough freedom to go around. So they will stop you. They say, oh, come and get a paper for us if you want to go. So they call that paper visa. If they don't give you a visa, you cannot go anywhere. So when you understand why people are not free, you understand why individualism matters. It is because of the selfishness of the human nature. It is natural for people to want to have everything to themselves, but it is unnatural when people have that right back, and then you are trying to enforce restrictions on them. So the reasons why we cannot enforce individualism in a society where there is no freedom is because, first, the freedom is missing. So individualism, when you consider every individual as important, that is when you can truly say, oh, they have rights and their rights must be respected. But if you don't see them as people who have rights, you don't see them as people who have the inalienable natural right to earn profit and to make productive use of their time, talent, and resources for themselves, then you impose restrictions on them. So in a society where there's no freedom, of course, there will be no respect for individualism, because the individual is what is considered first in the free society. So until the society is free, you might not have room to explore your individual self. All right. Yes, any other question? Let's have questions on the chat box. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise them now.
Yeah, Mr. Festival, I'm seeing other people are raising their hand. So
yes,
it is
please,
like
let them
they want to make input.
Surely, please do.
Yeah, so Ezekiel Kamara, we can come on first before we recognize Vasco. Ezekiel, is there anything you want to say? Ezekiel M. Kamara, are you there? Okay, Vasco, you can go ahead. Hello?
You can speak now.
Vasco.
Hello?
Yes, please, you can.
Yeah, Vasco, you can go ahead.
Okay. First of all, let me be appreciative to our lecturer this evening. You're welcome, sir. Thanks for the beautiful topic individualism. I think we all benefited and paid from your experience because sometimes in your society you have to be you have to set priority and goals. And when you're practicing this topic, individualism, you have to prioritize goal. I think this is very important for us because sometimes you are self-reliant and you're self-independent. It puts you above others in the society. But I never heard you talking about some disadvantages because sometimes when you self-independent, there are a lot of constraints, a lot of disadvantages are applied to an individual being self-independent. So I don't know whether you can just touch on that some advantages and disadvantages of that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Vasco. For me, there is, as much as there is no concept or perspective that is not fallible. I mean, no idea is perfect in itself. Of course, we have critics, even as libertarians, we have critics, people who don't agree with our line of thoughts. But of course, we are not interested in that. Probably I'll share with you the advantages of individualism. When individuals are respected and the rights of people are celebrated more than the rights of a particular group of people, there is room for people to grow. There is room for people to be able to acquire enough property. See, the reason why we all exist is to ensure three things. One, we want to be happy. We want to get what we want, and we want to make others happy. Truly, every individual has that desire to get what they want. You want money, you want a good education, you want to live a comfortable life, you want to extend that gesture to someone else, you want to be happy, you want to be free, you want to go out when you want to go out. Now, all of these things are core benefits that you derive if the system allows you to do that. If the system is is constraining you from getting for, at least the first thing you need to go to school, get a degree. And then, okay, you are learning enough to be able to engage in trade and then do so many other profitable things for yourself. The process of getting that degree you have been frustrated in the process. Then, what do you say? Okay, so the advantages of individualism is enormous. It eventually helps us to build a free society. Is a strong pillar in building a free society. And of course, in a free society, you can only imagine, you cannot explore in totality the advantages of a free society. Because in a free society, everybody can trade. While you are making trade, you trade because you are friends. Or after trading, you become friends. That means there is reduced tension, there is reduced war, if there is any case between you and your client, your customer, you resolve it amicably, because at the end of the day, what binds you is more than the argument. There is a product, there is a service, there is a transaction between you and the other person that must go on for both of you to survive. So while you disagree on politics, you still go back to his shop to buy groceries. So he's still your friend, not your enemy. So you will not think of burning down his house during the election. You will not think of harming him because he has a different political opinion. So there will be reduced war, there will be reduced tension. People will embrace each other. There will be warmth, there will be love, there will be freedom. Everybody will explore, will flourish, will blossom. And what we are looking for will come to us as fast as possible. People will care for their neighbors more. And that's the true core essence of humanity. People begin to show empathy to one another because they notice he's my neighbor. He's important. He's relevant. His opinion matters. His happiness is also important. Why will I have chicken to eat in my house and he does not have any food to eat? Why not share the chicken with him? Rather than buy a chicken, why not buy fish to go around? We begin to think of our neighbor when we identify that the neighbor is important. But it's because, oh, who's my neighbor? I don't even care. So it's not important. So you see, flip the advantages of individualism and then think about the disadvantages yourself. I don't see any problem with individualism, honestly speaking. I don't see how it could cause problem. Oh, you say, okay, you want to say that if everybody is free, we might act arbitrarily. No. The concept of individualism teaches us that you act within the confines of the law. You are aware that everybody has rights. And whatever you do is in respect of another person. You do not smoke in the public where there are other people who do not smoke. You go to a corner, you take your smoke, and you're okay. That's because you understand that every individual is important. Isn't that the better way to go about it? So we are not saying do not smoke. You smoke, but make your smoking affect only you. That's it. So that's the advantages of individualism. Let's check. I think we have other comments. Let's check. Okay. Question: how do we stratify individualism and attempts at infringement on human rights? How do we stratify individualism and infringement on human rights, especially in the context of humanitarianism? Okay, great. Let's check that. How do we stratify individualism? Well, you stratify individualism in the fact that if human rights, now you have human rights when you are existing. I have said it, that if human rights, if humans are not recognized as an embodiment of existence, it is difficult for their right to be respected, let alone observed. So individualism is core into respecting human rights. It establishes that others have rights. No, I have rights. I am responsible for myself. Others have rights, and I need to respect those rights as well. So you cannot stratify individualism you cannot stratify individualism and infringement of human rights if you do not understand that every individual matters. All right. What is the delicate line of balance between individualism and societal morality, bearing in mind of expressionism, the height of unchecked liberty? Now, again, there is a thin line that is very, very important in individualism, and that is what I call responsible freedom. Individualism does not say, oh, you can do anyhow, anytime, without caring. No. You can behave anyhow as long, or there's just one condition. Make sure you are not infringing on the right of another person. Make sure what you are doing does not hurt another person. Once that is ascertained, oh, please go ahead and do whatever you choose to like. Make profit as long as your profit does not harm the other person. As long as it is a mutual voluntary exchange of goods and services. Both of you have agreed to the price and the quality of the product. Go ahead and make your money. Go ahead and make your money. And then acquire property with whatever money you have gained from your legitimate trade. Okay? So, there is nothing as unchecked liberty. It does not exist. As libertarians, we do not agree that there's something called unchecked liberty. The Constitution sets the guideline for what are your rights, what are the rights of others. And once you respect this, of course, your liberty is checked. We understand that, yes, there is abuse of expressionism. People tend, because there is freedom of expression, people say anything anyhow. No, you don't just say things anyhow. There is what we call the moral standard. Now, it boils down to what appeals to you as a moral standard. Every culture, every society has their own way of, have their own standards of morals. And each society is structured in a way to outlaw some characters. So if this culture requires that you respect elders, very, 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 and then you disrespect an elderly person, of course, you have violated the law of the society because you do not recognize that individual as an elderly person, and you have not accorded to him the mutual respect he deserves from you. All right. So the society is best guarded when everybody realizes that their rights ends. The right of others starts where their own right ends. All right. I hope okay. How can you differentiate from individualism and collectivism? Okay. So I have mentioned the other time that the individual is more important than the collective. That means the collective is the bringing together of individuals. Collectivism says the group is more important than the individual. And we say no. The individual, every person is more important. Each member of the group is much more important than the entire group. Therefore, it is on this basis that the opinion of every member must be consulted. The interest of every member must count. The opinion, the perspective must be heard. Okay, so that's the two differentiation. One, individualism says individual is important than the group. Yes, everybody matters. Collectivism says the group is much more. Now, then we ask them, those who say collectivism is, they're probably their school of thought. We say, how do you now bring about a group if individuals are not involved? All right, I like the engagement from Dami, Lola, Ayowole. Okay, and what are the occasions in which individualism must be considered above? At all times. At all times. At all times. Individualism must be considered above collectivism at all times. Take the fact that collectivism is, both individualism and collectivism boils down to decision making. So if you are making a decision, you ask yourself, what's important in this decision? So you ask yourself, the individuals are important, right? So let us make decisions that we favor them. But if you say, oh, the group is important, let us do what we make this group to exist, and then you forget about the individuals, the group will crash. So at all times, especially when it boils down to decision making, every individual is important. Before you make a decision as an individual, consider the next person beside you. At all times. Before I came on this Zoom call, I knew some persons would need my attention. So I told them, sorry, for the next few minutes, I will not be able to attend to you because there are some other individuals. You are very important as much as they are. I should be attending to somebody else. But I choose to attend to you. I need to appeal to that person to allow me to attend to you. Shows that everybody is equally important. All right? So if I had chosen this group above the individual that is outside there, I would say, hey guys, you are on your own. I won't even give them any word. So collectivism must be considered at what occasions? Well, for me, I don't think I want to consider collectivism at all. I don't want to consider collectivism at all. I only consider collectivism at few instances when it drives cooperation. When it drives cooperation. So we say, let us aggregate our opinion, and let us decide on the, on the interest of this group. Okay, Vasco is saying you think individualism focus on individuals, while collectivism focus on groups. Correct. Individuals are responsible for themselves and immediate family, while collectivist looks at the family and extended family. No, not exactly. This is how it works. So as an individual, if you bring it to the family level, every person is responsible for themselves. But there is a head. There is someone who there is leadership. Like I said, it boils down to decision making. So when you want to make a decision, you say, oh, because the name of this family must not be spoiled, let us kill somebody. Let us kill a member of this group because you want to protect the name of the family. Okay? No. We say, let everybody come together and help this guy not to spoil the name of the family because we consider him more important to this family. We do not say, let us kill him. You cannot end an individual to continue a group. You see how that works? So you see why we do not agree with collectivists. Well, we don't have any issues with them. We just hope you realize that every individual is more important. That is what makes more sense, right? Great. So why collectivists say, oh, the family is more important. We cannot bring down the standard of the family because of one man. Individualism says, no, that one man is much more important. Let us all rally around him. Let us all help him to be better so that it does not in turn hurt this family. Can individualism work with our African traditions way of living? In fact, individualism is an African, see, we were more liberals than we were any other forms of thought or forms of perspective. Let me show you why. Africans, traditionally care more for themselves, their family, their immediate environment more. Core African traditionalists, they care for themselves, they care for their family, they care for their immediate environment more. That is the true African way of living. That's why they see the other person, they call him your brother. Even though it's not bearing the same, we are not blood related, he's your brother. Let me shock you. The typical African market is structured in such a way that if 10 women brings goods to the market on the market day, and one woman, goes out to ease herself, to use the convenience, and takes longer time, other women will sell her goods before she arrives and give her the money. I don't think you are getting it. If a farmer wants to sell 10 pieces of yam, he simply brings the 10 pieces of yam on the road and keeps it there and goes back to the farm. Anybody interested in that yam will pick it and drop the money and go. We care about the labor of that farmer who has dropped the yam beside the road. That is how Africans behave. There's another African expression. If you sweep the front of your house and I sweep the front of my house, the environment becomes clean. You see, it helps us to breed individualism, right? But what you see at the end of the day is that we have a very clean, safe, healthy environment, because you will sweep the front of your house, I will sweep the front of my house, and that is it. Everywhere is clean. So politically, economically, socially, we are more liberal. We were more of individualists, yes, than collectivists in our core true sense. You see, there's another proverb of, another African proverb that says it is, I don't know how to put it now, that only few people give birth, but the whole community helps to train a child. Now, the training of a child does not mean that I will abandon myself and train someone. No, I'm simply helping you because I want to be a better product of the society, because we want to be proud of you. We consider that person very important. Have you asked yourself why those who have access to education in the olden days, there was collective effort to push that one person up? Anybody who's interested in learning, reading books, they help you, they push you, the community celebrates you. That's the way it works. That's the African mentality. We're more of individualists than collectivists. We do not know how to be selfish. We do not know how to be to constrain others, how to restrict people from behaving. No, we want to be free. We used to be free until we started selling our rights. We started restricting from learning what our rights are. Okay, so yes, we have another question. Yes, I'll share the training modules with you. I'll share with the provost, and then he can I'll probably even share it on the group as well. What's the importance of individualism on the African nature, on the African society? Thank you very much. That question is very, very instructive. What's the importance of individualism on the African society? The importance of this course is for you to understand that you are important. It's for you to understand that you matter a lot. It's for you to understand that you have rights and that you have the right to be free. This right to be free requires you to be responsible for yourself first. Now, we're about 12 on this call from various countries. If we all become responsible for ourselves first, we do not depend on others for anything, except it is mutual and voluntary. Except it is mutual and voluntary. I'm not waiting for you to make your money and then hand it over to me. You are not waiting for me to make my money and hand it over to you. If we all are responsible, if we all strive to respect the right of the next person, trust me, Africa is on its way to becoming a free society. So the importance is to bring out the human nature in you. The human nature is a nature that wants to care, wants to cater, wants to be responsible first for himself, next for the next person, and then for his immediate environment. So the importance of this course is for you to understand that, yes, I own my life. I should be responsible for my life. I have the right to make decisions for myself. I must be responsible for the decisions I make for myself. I do not depend on others to take decisions for me. Anything that happens to me is my responsibility. I take charge of my life. That's what it means. Not, oh, it is XYZ's fault. Oh, no, it is ABC's fault. Anything that happens to you is your fault. So take charge. That's the essence. Then do whatever pleases you. Just make sure that you are not infringing on the right of others. So 2, respect the right of others. To even know what the rights of others are, find out, read more. Once you know what their rights are, you respect them. And then you move on. There are levels to it. And then you move on to caring for them. You know, the fingers are not equal. So why it is easy for you to cater for yourself effectively, it might not be easy for the other person to cater for himself effectively. So you learn the helping hand. That's the human nature. That's the African nature in us. Okay, so the essence of this course is to help you realize that first, you are humans, and that your humanity builds on how responsible you can be for yourself, how self-reliant you can be, how much of things that happens around you are you in charge of. If none, then you need to check. Probably you are a very dependent person. Okay, so the importance of individualism on the African society is to be able to drive more freedom, more responsibility, more respect for human rights for everybody. Okay, I hope I've been able to answer that. We have 9 more minutes to spend on this call. Am I an individualist or a collectivist? Oh, of course, you know that already. I'm an individualist. I am interested in myself. I am in charge of my life. I take decisions that are best suitable to me, and I respect the rights of others. I care about others, and I respect every individual. You are much more important than the group. I keep saying it. You are important. You matter. Your opinion is very, very, very crucial. As long as you're a member of this group, you are important. I am an individualist. Take it or leave it. And as an individualist, it boils down to making myself responsible to be able to contribute to you. To show now, if I have not been reading for myself, if I have not been attending seminars for myself, if I have not been a libertarian for myself, how would I have been able to teach you today? So my individualistic nature has helped me to contribute today. So you see, individualism has levels of various ways of impacting our society. So I'm an individualist. I welcome you. I invite you to becoming an individualist. How does this work? Think of yourself first. Yes, think of yourself first. Because the other person will not think of you first. He will think of himself first too. So think of yourself first. Ask yourself, well, Etando, yeah, individualism can be a valid basis for collective prosperity. True, because it is in the way you invest in yourself, the amount of responsibility you are able to accrue to yourself will determine how much of responsibility you are able to prick to the other person. So let's take what's this thing again now? Littering the environment, for instance. So I am responsible. After taking a sachet of water, I trash it into the in the trash can. If I do that and you do the same, will there be litters around? No. So individually, once we take responsibility for ourselves, we are driving collective prosperity. Yes, I agree with you. Thank you very much. Yes, it's a valid basis for collective prosperity. Am I positive or negative individual? Well, Ezekiel, I don't know what you mean by negative. Oh, you mean people that are selfish? That's not individualism. I mentioned it the other time. It is not a me versus us. No. We are not in competition. No, we are not in competition. We are not. I am not competing against you. I'm not asking you to read all what I have read, but I'm ready to share what I've read with you. I'm ready to put you through. I'm not asking you to say, oh no, you two go and read it. If you want to know about individualism, check all these books here. Go and read them yourself. You'll find your definition. No, I won't say that. So I don't know what you mean by negative individualism. But what I know is that every individualist thinks of himself first. Thinks of what helps himself, thinks of how helping himself will help others. You see how that works? Yes. Someone is interrupted. Do you want to interrupt? Yes, please proceed. All right. Seems that individual that is very important does not want to talk to us at this time. I want to sincerely thank you for your time. We have 5 minutes left, and if there are no questions, yes, thank you very much, Mohammed. It's a pleasure. Ezekiel, so I'm a positive individualist. If you want me to pick a position, yes, I am not a negative. You see, negative individualists are those who probably are selfish, self-centered. No, I'm not calling you to become an individualist, to be selfish and be self-centered and then accrue everything to yourself and then hoard it. No, that's not how to be an individualist. An individualist betters himself with the aim of helping the other person to be better. And then you focus on individuals. Individuals. How much of these things do you know? How much of these things do you need? How much of these things would help you? Growing individuals. See, individuals are there is no, if I just send this lecture to the group, probably somebody will not even click it. Probably you will not get to ask a question. But we are sharing this knowledge together because you are very, very important. It's important that I talk to you directly. Okay? So I hope we have been able to establish that individualism is not a biased thing. Fine. You choose how many types of individualism do we have? I mentioned them in the beginning. We have political individualism, we have economic individualism, we have philosophical individualism, we also have social individualism. Okay, part of what forms political individualism is what we call free thoughts. There are people who believe that they can think anyhow. Yes, feel free to think anyhow. Have you seen people who make animal shapes from flowers? These are people who think wild. There are people who believe that, okay, the philosophical phases where we have the classical liberalism, people believe that, oh, there is a way freedom has been existing over some time. Let us keep it that way, classical liberalism. There are people who say, oh, they are conservatives. They want to keep the status. There is no PDF. I'll send the slides of the conversation to you. There is no PDF. I'll send the slides of the conversation to you. All right. So there is the political, there is the philosophical, there is the economic, and there is the social part of individualism. All right. Those are the types of individualism that we have. Okay. Which type of individualism do we practice in Africa? It's called core individualism. Let me shock you that Africans are the best teachers of individualism. Ask me how. Our culture, our tradition is so rich that it teaches individualism to the core. You know, I mentioned it to you the other time that we were more liberals than we were any form of other thoughts. And this is how it works. So, a man gives birth to a child. He trains this child. But the child does not belong to only him. If the child misbehaves, the neighbor can pick up the child and beat him up as a corrective measure to guide the child. You see, as much as the man has his own children to cater for, he will go ahead to beat his neighbor's child for misbehaving. Socially, right? Politically, we do not want power to ourselves. That's not true. We're not power drunk. Africans are not like that. Of course, we have grown to become otherwise, but that's not who we are. And that's why we are not stable about it. Check our traditional institutions, for instance. One man can become king, but the community rules decides what happens in that community. Okay, let me shock you. That there was the time a king thinks of himself too highly than the people. They tried all forms of correcting him, appealing to him. This king would not yield. One night, the whole village decided and they moved away. They traveled, they left the community for him. So who was the king over? To show you that Africans are not negative individualists and they don't believe in collectivism. The man wants to keep his reign as a king over a community, forgetting that it is the people that make you a leader. If there are no followers, there is no leader. So he was king, right? That's because there's a people. So the people left and they left him to his king. So only him was the king. So who was the king over? His kingship ended. You see, to show you that Africans truly have these core values in them that treat individuals as important. You can go to the king's palace as an individual and lay a complaint. The king will listen to you, a poor farmer. The king will listen to you. A petty trader on the road, the king will listen to everybody. The same way we listen to his chiefs is the same way we listen to that blacksmith. Everybody is important. You can't tread on anybody. There are laws, there are guidelines. You can't just cheat anybody. There are principles that guide the environment, the societal, behavior. African culture gives room for religion to intervene, human character to impact us, and then it's rich enough for us to guide ourselves. Unlike all of these forms of novel forms of societal administration that has brought us into so many forms of inconsistencies. So the type of individualism we practice in Africa is the core individualism. Of course, we have lost this. We no longer care for our neighbors. We no longer take care of ourselves. Now people now build houses and build tall, long high fences. Why? Because they're trying to protect themselves. Before, nobody had fences. Nobody had fences. The community is just like that, a row of buildings going straight. After you see the houses, you see the farms. After the farm, you see the central village, the central, probably the market, then the palace. That's how what makes a village. But now we now build houses with fences, trying to protect ourselves from our neighbor. The same neighbor who we used to gather together at our backyard and then go to the farm together and go to the stream together is now the bad neighbor that you want to protect yourself from. It's because we have lost our individual sense of individualism. Okay, so I think we have to stop here now, if you don't mind. And if you still have questions, feel free to shoot your questions to my inbox. My email is available. I'm also in a WhatsApp group. You can ask me your questions directly. If you need more clarifications on the topic for today, I'm always available for more clarifications. And of course, all other forms of ideas of liberty that you might have issues with. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Bayon Lefesobi. Thank you, Gip Jao, for the invite. I sincerely appreciate it. And thank you very much for the opportunity. All right, guys, in the absence of questions, I guess we are all satisfied this evening to have been educated about what individualism is all about. If there are no questions, we'll bring this session to a close. And then I wish you a good term. And I wish you all graduate very well from this class and become libertarians that will change the world and be individualists. Thank you.